Okay, so my name's Carol Johnson and I'm the IT director at the Telegraph. I've been here about 10 years and I've had various jobs in that time. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Women in Tech, Not Just Code. I founded this earlier on in the year, so we've only been going a few months and just starting to get the network going, so thank you very much, Yota, for giving us this opportunity. Women in Tech, Not Just Code came about because I'd been to so many different events, and what I realised is that everybody talks about developers, everyone talks about coding, and everyone talks about STEM. And the thing I find is that actually technology in the tech sector is such an amazing space, and there are so many women, and men even, who can have the opportunity in that area, but we all focus on just development and coding. So not to diss anybody in the room who's of that ilk, you know, we still love you and we still want you to be part of this community. But this is really about sharing the love around women, around technology as a sector. Our mission really is to provide a place where women or young girls can belong, where we can engage with like-minded individuals and really support each other, very much like you were saying about supporting each other through networks, and to be able to inspire and create confidence to believe in ourselves and to believe in each other as well. Aims are really to create a peer network, provide support for each other, role models, but actually real models. Too often we see people who we can't necessarily relate to, or there are so many big names that just keep going around the circuits and we just see the same faces and hear the same stories. And demonstrate a route into technology through the various career paths and give people identities that they can follow as well. And establish affiliates across all other networks. So, if you're working in a company that doesn't have a women's network, then, we'd happily come along and help share our thoughts with you and maybe get Women in Tech, Not Just Code going in your environment too. Values. So this one is really important for all of us who are in Women in Tech, Not Just Code. There's the reality. I don't know about you, but if you go on social media, you'll see an awful lot of things that I don't feel really relate to technology. So we're trying to give reality and perspective on some of those conversations. No man bashing, very important. Great to see so many men in the room. We really need you as our allies. You're there to help and support us, and women will have many male leaders along the way. So sharing that community, sharing the conversation, and really putting a spotlight on some of the challenges that we're all facing is really important, but it's about being inclusive as well. We're not excluding anybody, so it's great to see so many of you here. And plain speaking is a really big one for me. So many sound bites. I've been to so many events where people say things or they all repeat the same words, and half the time I'm not too sure what they're talking about. Things like fake it till you make it. I don't know what that means. Bring your whole self. Well, I'm here, I don't really know what it means. We're trying to give some perspective of, what we think that sort of thing might mean to you or to us. And let's face it, not everybody is Michelle Obama or Sheryl Sandberg. So, we want to give you some opportunities to see people who have a different perspective. So, oh gosh, I better start using this clicker thing. The talk, We Are Born to Fail, and Why Failure is the Meaning of Life. That was the draw. That's what we were hoping to get you here to hear. But that's not the real talk. The real talk is we are born to learn, and learning is the meaning to life. And I really believe in this. And I'm hoping with some of these examples you'll see why I do that. But the first thing is, how did an introvert, yes, I am an introvert, actually, how did an introvert like me end up on a stage talking to you? How did a human email, when one of her first jobs was to be delivering messages between departments because we never had computers in those days, how did the human email become the IT director of an amazing brand, working in this fantastic office, globally recognised? Talk about imposter syndrome. But one of the things for me is I never dwell on the past, and when this topic came up, I thought I really struggled to try and find a way of articulating some of this. I've always looked forward, and for me, I have a really strong mantra with hence the picture of the doors is, as one door closes, another one opens. And I find myself passing through various rooms. I see the door behind me, I see the door in front of me. Sometimes I'm in a really large room, a bit like this one, I'm having some fun and I'm enjoying it. And other times, maybe I'm forced to, but I need to go into a smaller room and I don't like it in there and I want to pass through really quickly. But one thing that I always have in the back of my mind is I proceed until apprehended. It's a mantra that someone else sort of gave me, and I really like that. I just keep finding a way of going forward. And I didn't realise that I had been on a journey going through a number of different rooms, and I hadn't realised that until I was asked the question about, how do you get where you are today? So if I look back, if I kind of cast my eye over my shoulder, I realise I have been on a long journey and I have passed through so many rooms. But what I also realise is that the world has adapted and changed around me, and that can only be a good thing. And I think that's a brilliant time for women, or anybody actually in technology. There are so many opportunities for us that maybe we didn't have, certainly when I was younger. So what is failure? I mean, none of us want to see this big red stamp on anything, but what is failure? And as I said, I hadn't really thought about it. Things happen for various reasons, but is it really failure? Sometimes things happen for a reason, whether that's a decision you've made or someone has made for you. Maybe there are choices you've made. Sometimes things happen because we've procrastinated, we've maybe missed an opportunity, we've maybe been somewhat frightened, there's fear. We've made conscious or unconscious choices, whether they be positive or negative. And for me, I think one aspect that comes to mind is I've always done things with intention. I never really thought of it as an ambition. I mean, I think if you've got that, that's absolutely brilliant. But for me, I never thought about that. I just had intentions to do things and I had to find a way to do that. I actually didn't realise I could have an ambition. And I've always found a way to just do the job I'm doing, but really excel at it, do a really good job. And I think one of the challenges of being a woman in tech or working in general is I've certainly with the women I've spoken to, is we end up doing really long hours. We put in so much extra effort. We don't always feel like we're being recognised. But I'm doing a really good job. Why isn't anybody paying attention to that? But somebody once said to me, how about doing the best to your potential? A concept I hadn't even thought of. I was good in what I was doing in this space, in this room, but actually I could be growing to my potential in the next room or the room beyond. And that was a real eye-opener for me. Before I carry on, I'm going to show you a little video. There may be some distortion on the sound, which is a bit of a shame because it was working quite well earlier. But we'll give it a go. She sounds a bit like a Dalek, sorry. So I think I've just won my £250 from You've Been Framed. Thank you very much. But what did you see there? What did you hear? You had mum was encouraging baby. Come on, give it a go. Baby's there struggling, wanting to crawl, wanting to move on and getting really frustrated. You could hear her growling and go like, oh, I just want to do this. But there's something so magical about babies. There is something so magical about children. When you watch them and develop and grow, you watch her there and she's born to fail. She is learning with every action she takes and how to improve and how she can learn from those mistakes. That's what life is about. But then something happens. She starts to walk, and then she starts to grow up, and then she becomes a teenager, and we spend the rest of her life going, no, don't do that. Stop what you're doing it wrong. I told you not to do that. And for some of us, that carries on through school, that carries on through work. And some of us have worked in lots of places where you're just told you're wrong all the time. And that's not a very nice place to be. So we've ended up teaching people to stop learning from their mistakes. So is it any wonder when people go to work, especially the younger generation, and we start asking them questions, what do you think, what do you feel? They're like bunnies in the headlights. They can't answer. So we have to re-educate them again when they come to the workplace about what it's like. This is okay. You can fail in this environment. It's not a problem. So some examples from my story. I came from a very poor background. And so I didn't actually enjoy school. It wasn't the greatest place for me. And I was always a worrier. And I had lots of fears of failure, and I didn't want to sort of push myself too hard in case, I made a huge mistake. I didn't want to be laughed at. But I always had an ambition to learn, which is a bit of a challenge when you don't push yourself, but you want to learn. But what did drive me was my need to work. I had the intention to go out and earn money, and I would do whatever I could to earn money, but I never had any ambition about the job. And along the way, I've had various opportunities. But when I realised that the place where you could really earn your money was in London, I had to conquer my first fear: trains. I'm blooming petrified of them. Well, I was, and I learned how to get over that. But when I went for my interview and I came home and I was in floods of tears, my boyfriend, who is now my husband, said, "What's wrong? What happened? How did it go?" I went, "It was brilliant. I loved it." He said, "Why are you crying?" I went, "I got on a train for the first time." Ridiculous, I know, but I wonder what all the fuss was about. But that was a really big hurdle for me. And just that small thing made me think, wow, maybe I can do something here. And over the last 20 years or so, I've had lots of little failures, as we're calling them, to help shape my future, and I'll share a few of those with you now. So there was a period in my life where some of you will have heard about the dot-com bubble and lots of things happening there. It was not a very good time to be working, and I ended up working for a number of different companies who got bought by other companies, and so I ended up having quite a few redundancies in succession. Really annoying when you want to earn money. And so I thought, I'm not doing this anymore. I need to find a way of making sure I can secure my own future. So I thought, I do IT. I'm going to set myself up as an IT consultant, which is great. So set myself up. I'm my own boss now. No one can tell me what to do. This is brilliant. I'm walking into high street shops. I'm walking into high street businesses. I'm going into large offices, and I'm selling my services. That sounds terrible, but you know what I mean. And I'm getting the work, and I'm really pleased, and I'm really happy with how that's going. But I realised I hated it. I hated going in and asking people for money. I hated going in and trying to tell them, I'm really good, you really need this, I can do whatever you want. It was awful. I realised I'm a corporate girl. I like working in big organisations. I like being around lots of people, and I really enjoy part of that teamwork. So I had to get back into that kind of sector. So what I did was I used the money that I was earning to self-fund a course. But this was a time when lots of people in IT were out of work. How do I differentiate myself? And I look at HR people, they have their qualifications. If I look at finance people, they have their qualifications. Technology certificates, afraid to say, they came in abundance in those days. So I had to find a way of differentiating myself. So I did this thing called ITIL. It's not the greatest thing to be thinking about, but that was a differentiator then. And I did the course. I passed with semi-flying colours. There was 2 parts to it. One was brilliant, one not so, but I passed. And that opened the doors for me in so many different ways. I got lots of job offers because I was able to differentiate myself from the experience I'd had running my own business, even though I hated it, and the opportunity I took to do the training and then come back into the sector. So ultimately, at the end of that was a really good success of what I felt was a failure, looking back. And another one I had was I was working for a company, and I found myself in a position where I'd been working there a few years, but I felt like I was sort of getting stuck. I wasn't really moving forward. I was missing out on opportunities, and it really started to frustrate me. Going back to this, I'm quite a quiet person, and I'm not going to shout about who I am, just look at the results. And my boss and I had a conversation. He said, I'm going to get you a coach. I wish I'd known you then. I'm going to get you a coach. And I thought, this is brilliant. This is exactly what I need. He's going to help me understand a little bit about what I need to do to maybe move things forward. And when I arrived, the coach asked me why I thought I was there. So I explained. And she said, oh, well, that's interesting. She said, because your boss thinks you're here for a different reason. I thought, that's interesting as well. And it was because he couldn't understand how I was able to get things done when he spent his whole life running around the office, cajoling people. He was a bit of an extrovert, he'd be making all this song and dance to get things done, but I would be able to sit at my desk and quietly get the work done and have the same kind of results. So he really didn't understand me, and he wanted me to change who I was to be like him. Well, that wasn't going to happen. But the coaching was brilliant. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about recognizing how other people behave, and I used that to my advantage. And what I came to realize is that actually, we had a parent-child relationship. He treated me like his child, and I allowed him, and I treated him like my parent. I didn't stay there too long, and I quickly moved on. But that was great because I got to learn about other people. And that's something that I've carried with me. I really find it interesting to understand who people are, what they're about, and how you can really bring that to your advantage in the workplace, especially when you're trying to build cultures and build teams. And then my final story that I'll share with you is a colleague of mine, my boss at the time, some people in the room will know who I'm talking about when I start to describe him. An American guy, rather loud, rather brash, very bold. And he would always have people eating out of the palm of his hands. Didn't matter what he was talking about. Literally, people were drooling. And then I realized one day he was telling them stories about some of the things that I had done. And I thought, this is great. He's telling everybody what we're doing. But I thought, how is it that he can do that and I can't? I'd come out with the most mundane, boring sentence about what I'd been doing, and he came out and it was like, everyone's like, yay. So I thought, okay, so we had to have a conversation. And he taught me the value of telling stories. He taught me the value of trying to find a way of describing what you do to sell yourself. I couldn't do it when I was walking the high streets. That sounds terrible as well. But the importance of trying to explain who you are and what you do without having to make it so sort of clinical and really express what it's about was really valuable to me. And so, it's really hard when you first start because you sound like a bit of a fraud trying to sort of come up to people and sort of whiz along this story. You think, oh gosh, I just sound like an absolute fraud. But over a period of time, he'd coach me, and at that time I was working on a project. We brought our service desk back in-house, and it was a really successful piece of work. And the partner we were working with at the time said, it was such a great story, would you like to do a case study for us? And I said, yes, I'd love to. And then when they brought the video crew in, I said, why am I doing this? This is like my idea of hell. But it's okay because they cut videos and make it really easy for you. And then they say, would you like to talk about it at one of the service management shows? And I did it again. I said, yes, of course I would. But when I got there and I realised I'm in front of an audience about the size that you are, and I'm holding on for dear life onto the podium as my knees are bouncing and I can barely speak, I did think, I have absolutely gone mad now. Why on earth am I doing it? But it was the best thing ever, because I realised I could do something that I never thought I could do. I pushed myself to do it. But it also gave me the opportunity to really not just talk about me, but to talk about the team, to talk about the company, and to talk about all the amazing and wonderful things we do. And that's a story worth sharing. When I look back, in fact, the thing I love about working today, everywhere you go, people talk about fast fail, fail forward. Yeah, it's a common phrase we hear. When I look back, I realise my whole life has been about fail fast and fail forward. So for me, living in this moment with that kind of phrase is brilliant, because it doesn't feel like failure, because it's absolutely fine to be able to do that. So as you see from this wonderful quote from J.K. Rowling, she did an inaugural speech, and there is a subtext to this which I won't spoil, but if you ever see it, it's worth looking at. It is impossible to live life without failing. So a number of things that I've learned. I didn't ask enough questions because I didn't want to look stupid, because I wasn't sure I was asking the right questions, and I didn't really want to be noticed. My intention was to be the best I could be at what I was doing, but I hadn't realised I could be the best of my potential. And along the way, I had lost my voice. I hadn't been listened to. I didn't meet people's expectations, and times were very different then. But I learned to listen a lot. I don't consider these as failures, and I don't look back on any of this with regret. So let's go back to our childhood. Do you remember having puzzle books as a child? Yeah? When you had to find your way to the middle of the The maze, yeah? Or there were 3 routes and you had to pick one, yeah? Have you been to a maze? Yeah, it's fun, isn't it? Slightly frustrating, but it's fun. And to me, what's great is as you're bouncing around trying to find your way out or way in, you know, if you find you get to a dead end, you turn around, you come back. But it's a bit of fun. There's no dramas, there's a sense of achievement. And that is what life is about. Life is a maze. Life is amazing. I'm not going to whiz through all of this, but there's a link at the top here. There's a blog on how to be resilient. And so some of the tips here, you'll be able to find in a little bit more detail. I'm just conscious of time. But certainly these things, I think, help. Understanding yourself and understanding others. Find a mentor. Find someone who understands you that you can really bounce your ideas off of. Talk to friends, phone friends, ask the audience. You know, just because someone doesn't understand the job you're doing, a little dose of common sense and reality is always good. If you're a people pleaser, stop being a people pleaser. Build that resilience and change your habit. If you have emotional habits that stop you from moving forward, find a way to break them. And a nice little quote from Ariana. We need to accept that we won't make the right decisions, that we'll screw up royally sometimes, understanding that failure is not the opposite of success, it's part of success. And as my American friend said, if something goes wrong, don't worry, no puppies died. So, thank you very much. Please follow us on the social channels. We would love to hear from you. We would love to get the conversation going. And if you are a BA or you're in delivery or product management or product, watch this space because there's something going to be coming in the new year. If you want to DM me, you can. That would be great. But thank you very much.